I've been told I have 5 minutes, but I've also been told I am the master of ceremonies, so I am in charge, which means I can take as much time as I want. So I want to start by saying thank you for joining us for the George T. Kalaris Intelligence Conference, which is co-hosted by the Center for Security and Emerging Technologies, CSET, and Georgetown University's Security Studies program. I am Ellen McCarthy, and I'm very delighted to be your master of ceremonies for the day. I'm just thinking about that, am I? So I'll tell you, I was prepping for this event yesterday, and wouldn't you know, at the State Department, and we had a fire drill. It was a nice day, so I was very appreciative of the folks who decided that yesterday would be a fire drill. And so as I'm walking down multiple flights of steps, we were talking about where we all were 9/11. So I thought, that's always good. You know, let's start an event with where were we today at this point in history? So that got me thinking about September 25th, and I did a little Googling, and I found that a show called The Partridge Family debuted in 1970. Who here knows who The Partridge Family is? That's not very good. Okay, I'm going to try again. So in 1975, Pink Floyd released an album. It was a concept album called Wish You Were Here. It made it to #1 within a week and sold 13 million copies. Who here knows Pink Floyd? Thank you. I'm feeling better about myself. Okay, but I'm going to actually give you a factoid that maybe has more relevance to where we are in terms of the event and things we're going to talk to about today. In 1956, the first transatlantic telephone cable went into operation on this day in history. I think that's kind of interesting, given that today, 63 years later, we're here at a conference where we'll be focusing on how artificial intelligence systems will provide both challenges and opportunities for the United States and for other nations. So, over the course of today's conference, you have this incredible opportunity to connect with academia, government, private sector, the media, for what I know is going to be just incredible dialogue. I've been to a couple of these events before, and they really are, I'm just very glad that I'm going to spend a day here with you all today, because I always walk away with a few things that I did not know coming in. And so I'm going to take advantage also of my role here as the MC to put a plug in for State Department's Bureau of Intelligence and Research. Who here knows INR? Okay, that's pretty good. Not as good as I'd like it to be, but that's because we're very small. So just a little bit of background on INR. We actually are the oldest all-source intelligence agency, civilian intelligence agency across the intelligence community. Yes, we predate CIA. We actually are celebrating our 74 years of being in existence, back when we were the resource branch of the Office of Security Service Support, OSS. We're small, but we are mighty. I'll tell you, we're roughly about 200 all-source analysts. We're made up of foreign service officers, civil servants who have on average 17 years in their region. So by comparison, we have about 200 analysts, and some of those other agencies have thousands of analysts. But with 200 analysts, we are the #1 producer per capita of the President's daily briefing, which I think is a pretty impressive. So we do a lot with very little. I think that shows you what it takes when you're just really good at what you do. So why is that important for us? Because we are so small, and in a world where there is more data and where there are different priorities, and where while the president may have priorities, the State Department INR is expected to cover the world no matter what. Because we have embassies around the world, we have bureaus that support events around the world, we have to support the world. So we need to have access to data, and we need to be able to do a lot with a little, and that's where AI provides some unique opportunities for the analysts at INR. But it also provides some challenges, because we have to understand what the impact is on our ability to do foreign policy as other countries gain AI capabilities as well. So that's why I'm interested, and I'm here today with one of our crackerjack cyber analysts, Joy Lin. Joy and I are going to be taking lots of notes, and we're going to go back with some ideas on how we can take 200 analysts and make them operate like they're thousands of analysts using AI. So with that, I encourage all of you to remain engaged in today's discussions. Each segment of our day will be time for questions, and there are stationary microphones positioned in the aisles. We will not be taking questions this first segment because we really don't have enough time, but I'll tell you, I've talked with some of my colleagues at CSET and Georgetown, and I have a sense of some things that we might want to get out of Sue, and I've prepped her to be ready, so we'll all be ready. Take advantage of the breaks and the lunches. I'll tell you, your network is as important as what you know, and you've just got some incredible people here to make connections with. I'd also like to remind the students here that there will be a career fair with more than 20 employers on site at the Healy Family Center starting at 3 p.m. The staff will be available to provide you directions. But I want you to look for a guy named Eric Johansson. He comes from the State Department. INR is hiring. Go to our table first. So we have a full agenda. There's actually one other item that I need to share with you all. Georgetown University is committed to the standards of promoting speech. This is from the lawyers. This is not from me, because it doesn't even sound like me. Georgetown University is committed to standards promoting speech and expression that foster the maximum exchange of ideas and opinions. While it is recognized that audience members may not share the same views as the speaker, it is expected that everyone in attendance at this event will respect the right of the speaker and the organizing student group or department to share their perspectives and ideas and not cause a disruption to the event's activities. Throughout today's conference, there'll be a question and answer sessions during which you may ask questions and engage in dialogue. Please be sure to phrase your comments in the form of a question. In the interest of time, we ask that each person be concise and ask only one question. So for all you rabble-rousers, stay calm. Okay, with that, I would like to welcome Dr. Keir Lieber. Actually, Dr. Keir Lieber, you're kind of welcoming me, but you're the director of Georgetown Center for Security and Emerging Technologies, CSET, and I'm awfully glad that you'll be joining me here on stage. Clap.
Thank you. Just one quick clarification. I'm the director of the Security Studies program and the Center for Security Studies. Jason, the amazing Jason Matheny, is the founder of CSET, the Center for Security and Emerging Technologies, and we are co-hosting this event today. Thank you, Ellen. Like Ellen, I receive an email every morning on this day in history, and I too thought for a second, oh, should I incorporate something in my remarks? If I had seen that Wish You Were Here came out, I would have said that. But there didn't seem to be anything that relevant to AI except one thing, which was on this day in 1777, what happened? The British occupied Philadelphia in the Revolutionary War. Philadelphia was then our capital. And so I did a quick thing, oh, well, what if things go wrong with AI and we don't invest in this important emerging technology? Might someday an adversary of the United States occupy Washington, D.C.? But I thought that was a little too extreme. I'm a little more measured than that. I am very excited for today's topic. And looking at the attendance here, I'm sure that many of you share this view. Frankly, I don't think there's any more important topic today deserving of further inquiry, discussion, debate, exchange of opinions than the impact of artificial intelligence on international politics and security. And I want to thank the Kalaris family for making today possible, for making this conference possible. George T. Kalaris was a giant in the intelligence community as a clandestine officer and as working in the IC after that in the 20th century. And we are grateful to host this conference in his honor and with the support of the George T. Kalaris Intelligence Studies Fund. In past years, including last year, we decided we would partner with a coordinating agency in the IC. Last year was NGA, National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. But this year we decided to partner with CSET, Georgetown's new Center for Security and Emerging Technology. CSET's founding director, the amazing Jason Matheny, will be on stage this afternoon. But today's panelists and keynote speakers are a real testament to the importance of these emerging technology issues and the unique role that CSET and hopefully CSS will play in informing policy debates in the coming years. I want to get right down to business, so I will introduce our distinguished guest, our first keynote speaker, the Honorable Susan M. Gordon. Sue was sworn in as the 5th Principal Deputy Director of National Intelligence 2 years ago in August of 2017. Just last month, she retired from that role after more than 30 years in the intelligence community, where she served in a variety of roles, including as Deputy Director of NGA, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, and 27 years in the CIA. Please join me in welcoming her to the stage to discuss why AI matters for intelligence.
Morning, how you doing? I just need to say this. Once again, I'm talking in front of my former boss, and it makes me nervous. Hey, Stephanie. Keir, thanks for the warm introduction. I'm delighted to again be here at Georgetown for the Kalaris Conference, talking about my favorite subject, and that's intelligence. And to be here with such a diverse group, I think, is especially apt, because the national security tent is increasingly large. And that's because data are crossing boundaries that they never crossed before, and the issues of our nation are the issues of free, open societies everywhere. So having diverse viewpoints and diverse thoughts on the same topic that we used to discuss very narrowly is especially important. Now, I'm going to talk about threats and opportunities and challenges, but I want to tell you I'm enjoying the delights of being a former. Because what this means is that every problem, every issue, every opportunity I'm going to articulate, you actually are going to solve. And so you're just going to have to deal with the fact that all my hopes and dreams rest on your shoulders. Now deal with it. So today I'm going to talk about the intersection of intelligence and technology. In this case, artificial intelligence, which is a good thing because that's what Keir said I was going to talk about. I've discovered, or it was pointed out to me, that I'm a reasonably formulaic speaker. So today what I'm going to talk about first, I'm going to remind you of the role of intelligence. And then I'm going to talk to you about the world today as I see it. And quite frankly, if you take nothing else from what I say today, I will admonish you to consistently force yourself to see the world for what it is. The forces acting on it, the way it's turning, because that in itself will keep you from holding on to how you wish it would be. And this is going to be especially important when you introduce a technology as transformative as AI, because you're going to challenge a lot of things about what we believe about how we must act. But all of that is predicated on a world that is vastly different from what it used to be. Then I'm going to segue into the combination of the two, our intelligence responsibility and global challenges, and how those drive the use and potential of artificial intelligence. I'll talk a bit about how the intelligence community is approaching solution, and then finally I'm going to articulate those challenges going forward, most of which won't be technological. And if that sounds good, we'll get on with it. So the mission of intelligence, as I describe it, is pretty simple, and it's been this for as long as I've been practicing it, which I think is the whole history of intelligence. The mission is to know the truth, to see beyond the horizon, and to allow leaders to act before events dictate. Pretty simple. And there's nothing about that fundamental mission that changes. But how you apply that craft is going to be very different. What's the truth? What the heck is the horizon? And allowing us to put information in front of leaders in a world where a good decision today is a bad decision tomorrow, and if it takes us 2 weeks to make a decision, it's just not going to work. So how do you do those three things? Now, we've been practicing this craft of intelligence kind of in a modern way since 1947, when the community was formed. But we are on the edge of what I think is a new inflection point. Let me talk about some then and nows. From 1947, really, through the end of the Cold War, the fall of the Berlin Wall about 1989, and a little bit beyond that, really and truly, the threats were nation states. The data were held by the governments. We got that data because we developed breathtaking capabilities that were uniquely ours to go find that data, and our customers were warfighters and policymakers. And that carried us through not only the fall of the Berlin Wall, but actually into the beginnings of proliferation, where we took that same craft and we tried to apply it to nation states that we didn't understand nearly so well as we did the Soviet Union, but it still was the foundation for how we did it. Nation states, data held by governments, using our special ways of going to collect it. And then 9/11 happened. And that was a remarkable change because now the threats were diffuse, and they weren't bound by the norms of statecraft, and the individual became the threat. And the data were only accessible by exploiting electronic communications and social media. So you see the rise and challenges of computer network exploitation. But more interesting, perhaps, the customers were certainly policymakers and warfighters, but they were also allies. And they were partners who weren't allies. And they were state and local governments. Because, in fact, those were the places that the threat was being manifested. We needed to figure out how we got our information to those. And now we're at a third inflection point where the threat is more challenging and diffuse than ever, and will force us to change. It is a world where the threats are increasingly to and through information. And I'm announcing right here that we can't evolve to that threat, that we are actually going to have to create anew. And again, this will be important for artificial intelligence because it isn't going to be the application of those technologies to how we used to do things, but it is how those technologies will allow us to be who we must be. Now, I said I was going to talk about threats. I'm not going to do the normal walk around the world. Let me just talk about our adversaries and information. Number one, they have greater access to information of various types and more of it than ever before. And they can gain access to military, political, and economic advantage. This has always been true, but what is different is the speed and the volume and the reduced cost at which they can do this. The global IT system is certainly more connected, more automated, more pervasive than ever before, and it offers reach and access for adversaries to gain, create, and manipulate information in mass quantities. And in particular, the surge of internet-connected devices and delegation of more and more decisions to machines offers both rich targets for our adversaries and raises the potential consequences when they get access to our digital systems. Data is the key ingredient for new technologies of the future. And in open societies, much of this data is free, publicly available, and relatively unprotected. And our adversaries are absorbing, gobbling it up like you wouldn't believe. And in some cases, because closed societies have different rules about how they can use data, they are getting more experience with data than even we are because of the way they construct their societies. And our adversaries are using information differently, not simply to acquire information, but to alter our decision-making through information. They want to shape our views and decisions. They want to undermine our trust in information that creates chaos in our systems. In other words, they'd like to make us not believe in ourselves. Because when you don't believe, you aren't as sure in your action. And so how do we do that? Now, this situation of a threat to and through information is either caused or amplified by three factors. Number one is every technology is available to everybody, and the one who can put it to clever use faster is the one that's going to win. And the people who can move faster are typically those who don't have an installed base or aren't governed by rules of law. And so this speed thing in technology is really important. So it means that it isn't going to be the same strategic advantage that it was because everyone will have it. And when everyone has it, then if you think about intelligence, how we assess what is going on geopolitically is very different from the old Soviet production model. Because of the availability of compute, you may not see the same time frames you had before. So every technology available to everyone. The second thing is global interconnectedness. Information moves incredibly quickly. It changes, that interconnectedness changes the aspirations of our adversaries. When I started, Iran worried about the piece of land next to them. And now they can attack across oceans, and the cost isn't very much. And the rules and the consequences aren't as clear. And everyone can see everything, but there aren't the same norms. And for us, that interconnectedness crosses boundaries that we believe in. Boundaries between the government and the private sectors, boundaries between federal and state and local, and our adversaries can cross them, and we believe in them still, and so there's a mismatch between what we can do. And the third condition is data abundance, which for intelligence officers should be an incredible boon. But today is too often a bane because we're drowning in it. And I would say society is drowning in it too. We as humans are trying to deal with each piece of information we receive as though somehow it matters. and you see us whipsawed around by information that we receive with no sense of its truth, or its relevance, or its context, or its governance, or its pedigree. There's a lot of it. The world knows the answers, but how do you understand it? So that's the backdrop for how the intelligence community is thinking about artificial intelligence. We have to master the potential of the emergent technologies because these technologies have the promise to secure the kind of intelligence dominance by allowing us to better see the world, provide advantage in that insight, and by protecting that advantage. Think back to our mission. Think to what our adversaries are doing. You will understand why the intelligence community must be the master. And you will also understand why the intelligence community cannot prosecute that dominance in a way that is exclusive to it. It must be with partners. It must be with partners in industry. It must be with non-traditional partners. We have to ensure the quality and the relevance of the intelligence we produce in a world that's making it harder for us to have confidence in our understanding of the world, and that's making it equally hard to ensure trusted communications. So I'm going to talk mostly about artificial intelligence, but it's bracketed by two other issues. The first one, critical to free and open society, is that you can trust your communications. Privacy is a piece of that, but it's not the only. And on the other end of it is influence. How are you sure that you are seeing what is true? And AI will broach those two, but I'm really going to talk about the middle. How do you understand the information for yourself? We have to harness the ever-increasing information the world possesses in ways that are respectful of privacy and civil liberties. My analogy to this is how much better we are when we build a green building than we try and make a building green. So when we go in the intelligence community, go down this route of needing to master these technologies so we can have intelligence dominance, it has to be with civil liberties and privacy built in right from the beginning. Now, the intelligence community calls this an AI strategy, AIM, augmenting intelligence with machines. And the reason we did that is because we wanted to signal that we cared more about the outcome, the use, what we were going to do with it than the technology itself. And the portfolio of initiatives is focused on the large projects that we have, problems we have, like in identity intelligence and countering influence operations, cybersecurity, long-range strategic indications, and on and on. It's a given that we must have technological innovation to address these problems, but technology alone is never enough. I could do a whole talk on how we're going to have the talent. Now I'm looking at my students. You all are going to have to be part of the solution. We have to have access to human talent to know what we want to do, how we're going to do it, and how we're going to enculturate it in a way to have it actually make a difference. We can't solve these problems if we can't find innovative ways to recruit, train, develop, and move our people. And it isn't just using AI to solve security clearance reform. Yeah, that was just a pander to people in the room. Sorry, I'm not here. Over to you. So 4 big ideas in our AIM strategy. The first is we have to accelerate investment in the digital foundation and the data. Luckily, the intelligence community did this. We figured out it was about compute at the very inception of it, and if you heard the word eyesight, that is really our digital foundation. Interestingly enough, though, we found that if you wanted to use that compute capability, it was the data that were going to make a difference, and we hadn't thought as much about how we were going to make sure the data can operate and be used in the ways that we needed to, because we still had data owners. And we designed our infrastructure for how humans want to use data, and increasingly have to think about structuring it for how machines want to use data. And that's very different. And given the global connectedness I talk about, we have to think about how we're going to connect with partners. And I say all this in the same, because we're not really having a technological conversation. But this foundation is important because you have to know the use that you envision in order to ensure that you have the technical foundation and the infrastructure. And if you don't have the infrastructure, you will never get there because you will be too slow. You won't be able to imagine the potential. Think of what will happen if all the data were securely made available for use. Curiosity would come back. I could ask infinite questions. Machines could ask infinite questions, and we could operate at the speed of the world we need to. So if you don't think about the infrastructure, if we don't invest in being able to do compute, move data, secure data in a way that everyone feels are protected, we will neither meet the needs of intelligence nor the speed requirements of it. The second big idea is the US government is not the leader in this technology and is likely not to ever be. And so what we have to do is become fast followers. Now, becoming a fast follower is a fun thing to say, but you run slam into our acquisition problems where it's hard to bring established technologies into our systems because we tend to have a preferred way of doing things, and most of the new capabilities were developed in ways that imagined ease of use and outcome without imagining that it needed to work in an arcane system. So this notion of us being fast followers is important. We're going to have to design systems that can accept it. But the people who are developing the technologies, if they want to contribute to this national security thing of which I'm speaking, are going to have to think about how their great ideas scale and operate in a heterogeneous environment that is not tuned for performance, but is more tuned for security. We do, however, have to invest in the gaps in AI that the private sector isn't looking at, because our needs are different. And the biggest one that comes to mind is artificial intelligence, assurance, and security. My glib example is always, it's pretty cool if Netflix recommends to me the wrong film. It will not work if what the intelligence community does gets a recommendation of a target that is not sound. And so how are we sure that the algorithms that are really just instantiation of human opinion are both well crafted and well protected so they can't be corrupted? Because it's not just the theft of data that our adversaries would seek to influence. It will be the decisions that our machines are making. And you say, aha, that's why we need human in the loop. So many things are going to happen so fast that humans aren't going to be able to be in the loop. And so how do you make it explainable and protected and known? And the last thing is we're going to have the government invest much more into the research into sense making. Because right now AI is really pretty good at counting things, getting better at seeing change, not yet very good at understanding what significant change is enabled across domains. Can't tell me the deep fakes are getting so good, but that's because they're operating in one domain. The defeat to that is, could it look like that in that time, in that space, and we don't have the research done to be able to put those things together. And why is that important? Not just for us, but the drive of national security has always driven what is societally advanced. And if intelligence makes those kinds of protections, that kind of sense-making happen, you all will all feel better about getting in a self-driving car. Couple more points about our strategy. We're participating in all of the ongoing commissions from the President's Commission and the Congressional Select Committee on AI. We work with the DoD, and when Jack Shanahan comes up here later this afternoon, he is our closest partner. That connectedness means that there isn't going to be the hard barriers between intelligence, policy, and operations. Our data are going to have to talk to each other so that we can operate at speed and reach ourselves. So whatever Jack says is true. He can cover what I didn't do well. And we're working hard to establish an ethical framework for the use of AI in the IC. You know, if you're an intelligence officer and you look at this world, it is so exciting to imagine being able to prosecute the world's data. Rather than just looking at the data that we have specifically collected and we have curated, and it's awesome. But there's a lot of stuff the world simply knows that we need to be able to use in order to provide the clarity, wisdom, and insight that our leaders expect, to find the patterns that you can't find, to use the bigness of the data to understand trends in ways that we can't see it, or find things that cannot possibly be true, rather than presuming that anything can. But if we're going to do that, we're going to have to do so in a way that our society believes that we are being trustful, trustworthy, protective of that information. So this notion of AI and ethics is perhaps even more important for the national security sector to take on than anyone else, because of the responsibility and the opportunity the American people give us in order to apply our trade. Okay, a couple cats, dogs, and unlabeled kiwis before Ellen. We're going to sit down and do some Q&As, right? We need to be able to use more data and trust the data we use. That is a really hard thing for us. If you just think about all the data that are out there now, most of the data that comes across my life, particularly that related to me these days, is completely untrue. But how do you bring it in and how do you use it? But without that, if the intelligence community just stays with data that we can curate, that we understand in the ways that we have, we will not be able to get to the future. We cannot have the world knowing more than we know. When we want to give more than simply our opinion to our bosses, we want to give them craft. And we can't apply our craft without data, so that's an interesting challenge. We're going to have to make integrating data cost-free. Right now, it costs way too much to bring a whole bunch of data streams in. It's true externally, and it can't be true internally. And so that means that data owners are going to have to understand that they don't actually own the data. It's owned by the community, and we can define ever-expanding rings of community, but we're going to have to figure that out. And the reason why integration has to be cost-free is mostly speed, but also depth. Total digression, sounds like a mom. I worry so much about the computers we carry around on our hands because it has taught us to not wonder. We used to wonder, and now we can just know. And I see this in my women and men because the processes and systems are so routinized that they deal with the information that comes to them rather than asking the question about, I wonder if these two things go together. Can you tell me everything that happened in the world within 1 second of this time? Or 1 minute of latitude? And if integration were cost-free, you could ask those questions. And if you had the tools in order to be able to have those questions being asked routinely, think of what we would see and what we would do. Third, we are very innovative people. We are in the intelligence community. I mock us all the time for saying we're not. We're innovative. We simply just don't innovate enough. We're innovative. We think of things. We introduce one-offs, but we don't actually commit to the new. So we're just holding on that this is what we really do, and we're trying this. So how are we going to do that? That's a human emotion. So as we're introducing these technologies, what do we need to be able to see in order to be able to commit to them? Everyone is going to have to be technical or technically savvy. It's just true. And the reason why you must is without that, we will not address the cultural challenges that will impede the use of these technologies. In the intelligence community, it's trust, or what I do, or my skills. And if it still is up to the technologists to deliver to each person something that fits within their paradigm, It's not going to work. So you have to be a comfortable data swimmer, and you have to be technically savvy, regardless of what you do, because we need much more mission pull. Technologists are doing way too much of the work. And anyone who's ever tried to do anything knows until you put something into practice, you won't find out what was wrong with what you thought. So for all my economists and econometricians and my political scientists and my international relations students, if you don't get yourselves into the technical side, you will not be producing the pull that we need, and we will be stuck because we won't put it into use. And we will have lots of innovative things, and we won't have innovated. We're going to have to partner with people we don't know how to trust yet. Now, my experience is in times of great crisis, that becomes much easier. We're in a time of great crisis. And that's not scary. We've been there before, but I will tell you, this is one of those that we need to get on our little horses. And so holding on, if it's not going to work. It's like saying, you gave me the job to count cars, and the only way I know how to do it is stand in the middle of the highway and count cars. That isn't going to work, but I can't hold on to that because that's the only way I know how. I'm going to have to trust other things. And so we're going to have to trust partners that we don't know how to trust. And we're going to have to, instead of needing one to support the other, we're going to have to find a new shared value proposition that says, but what we can agree on is where we both must go, and then allow ourselves to go there differently. And that is not what we are practiced at doing. Critical thinking will always carry the day, particularly when technology isn't the strategic advantage it once was. So this is just Sue's paid political announcement. Be readers. Learn critical thinking. Because even if you are someone who's developing a capability, you got to say, I wonder how I could use that. What could I do? How will it work? Be a critical thinker. Put things into play. I'm grateful that you let me share time with you today. I love this craft and this community. I'm fond of saying that this world is one that needs heroes. The craft and practice of intelligence, the people who effect it, can be the heroes of the story right now because of the space we are gifted to occupy. AI is a natural partner for that quest, but that quest is going to put incredible demands on artificial intelligence because it cannot be casual. Back to my formulaic speeches, I always end with a quotation. So this one is one of my faves from an icon in the intelligence community, Edwin Land, of the Polaroid land camera, and who is really one of the fathers of photo reconnaissance. And he said, never take on a problem unless it's manifestly important and nearly impossible. So I think we've got a good one. Thank you very much. Let's go get them.
You answered all my questions. Yeah, I have a couple questions. First, thank you. I'm just saying, wow. I loved your analogy about building a greenhouse, that it's easier to build a greenhouse than it is to retool an existing house. So looking at the intelligence community right now, and Robert, this will sound familiar. You and I were talking about this yesterday, where I think logically we all know we need to think this way and do this way and incorporate this thing, but there's that whole human side of it, which is it's just so hard to actually do it. We go back in and we do our budget process the same way, and we do our analysis the same way, and we do everything the same way, even though we know that when we leave the building, there's another way to do it. So is the IC, can we retool the IC, or do we need to build a new greenhouse?
I always think there's a pony. It's a fair question, right? And if you think through the history of innovations like Xerox PARC or other things. Those were, we needed to create something outside because we could not create it inside. So maybe. And I think one of the areas that intelligence community ought to think about going outside is in the use of unclassified information. It's well suited because the data are already there. And it is hard for the intelligence community to use unclassified information because we have such guilty knowledge that everything we see, we're like, I'm not sure that that's unclassified. I might have seen it someplace else. And so I think that's an area where we might want to look at actually creating something outside. But even when you want to change big like that, I think every unit can change a bit, and in aggregate that will make sense. I would start with 2 rules. Number 1 is data ownership. Got to get away from people thinking that because they were responsible for collecting it, that they were the ones that get to determine how it's used. And then the second is the people who are collecting data don't get to decide how it's collected. It has to be collected with use in mind. And if we actually got ourselves to the point that the data could move effectively, then I think just the pull of the issues that we're facing that require integration, the work we've done over the past years, will actually pull us to that point.
I think you're right. I agree with you on that. So I'm come from the Bureau of INR. We're mostly all-source analysts, and our analysts start their day. And by the way, we are not on the cutting edge of technology at the State Department. I know you might find that as a surprise. So we start our day.
But you've only been there like a couple of months, right?
I've been there like 8 months.
Yeah, so it's right around the corner.
It is. So our analysts start our day and they start reading diplomatic reporting, the cables, and then they read other pieces of analysis, and they pull this all together. And actually, I had one analyst say it takes about 3 years to get good, because we're reading it and then you're picking up trends, you're seeing what's important. How in 5 years, so we look at the Intel strategy in 2025, how is their life going to be different? And I say this because at INR we're waiting for the next great tool, because we're so small. We need more strategic thinking about how we can incorporate these tools. But we're waiting for the next tool. How might it be different for that analyst, that all-source analyst? How might their products be different? How might what they're looking at is different?
I probably have to be careful with this answer. So this is the opinion of Susan M. Gordon. The former. So I think a mindset shift first would help. And that's, what do we need to know versus how am I assessing what I see? And the reason I think that's so important is I still think we're in intelligence for people who want to know something rather than intelligence for people who want to do something. And this is a world where people want to do things, and that's a different thing. So it makes you have to understand what people are trying to do and get there. So the mindset shift. And my best example of this, I've told some audiences before, I was speaking in front of a Senate Youth Forum with a bunch of 17-year-old kids from every state in America. Now, amazing kids, but 17. And I was talking about, leadership and intelligence and stuff. And then I took questions, and in the back, a hand shot up, and here's what she said. She said, "Hey, I'm Becky. I'm from North Dakota. I'm a junior at North Dakota High School. I'd just like to know what you think about 38 North and their use of digital globe imagery in terms of understanding what was going on at the North Korean missile test sites." In 1980, I spent my whole life trying to know that, but now that is known, and that isn't what we need to know. But how are we going to have craft at the speed we need rather than just opinion? So I would start with the mindset shift. And if you had the mindset shift, then you would say, I need more data. And so you would insist on having more data, and then you would say, well, I need to be able to use that data, and so you insist it. So that's why I say mission pull, but I think it's going to come with your analysts. We've talked about this. I think state analysts have such potential to be drivers, but quit being passive.
Hear, hear.
Yeah.
So that actually leads to my next question about, can you give us some examples, and I think you already have in some ways, of how AI is already being used in the IC?
Well, there's, I'm looking at Robert. I think the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency did so many things for the intelligence community about really understanding that AI could work. And so it used some of the things that it was already very good at doing, as going through massive amounts of scene and data and pulling out things that were known. And so where you're seeing AI in the intelligence community is in going through massive amounts of information to find known things faster in broader areas. And that's true finding things that are existing geospatially. It's true in terms of being able to identify voices in those kinds of communications, but it's more about being able to find things you care about that you understand in large swaths of data. You're also seeing it just in practice in most of our business processes like everybody else. We're starting to use it in security, using AI itself to be able to both protect networks but also to find gaps in our own AI algorithms. And we're working with industrial partners to be doing the things that you can do externally about being fast followers, like finding faces in pictures. So we're coming along pretty quickly.
Okay, I'm going to have two more questions. I know I'm
Okay.
being given 5 minutes, but I'm going to ask two more. One
Okay.
to
I'll
address the
answer them in
students,
tweets.
students in the room. Yeah. For the students and one for the our private sector folks who are here. So for the students, and actually for the government workers who are sitting here as well, you address the students in terms of the kinds of skills they're going to need as they go to that career fair afterwards and go into government, hopefully.
Yeah, best first 5 years.
There are a lot of analysts and practitioners already in government.
Yep.
So how do you balance, recruiting people with the right skills and working with the people you've already got who might need to be trained or might need to be, some way acclimated to this whole new world? How do you do that?
So for the people that are already in our community, who live in awe of our interns and our students and the people we bring every day, and I try and remind them that we have always hired excellence and that they are the same person, they're just a little wiser. And it's gotten a little stodgier because instead of being excited that you were asked to do anything, you decide over time that you're only going to do that. So I would say I would remind them who they are, remind them that they've always had those skills, but free yourself from holding on to what you've always done and consider the possibility that you might need to do what we need of you now, and that can be rewarding too.
Thank you. One more question.
Oh, and by the way, for the students, I don't care what you think you want to do, best first 5 to 10 years of your career is going to be spent in the government, particularly national security, for two reasons. Crazy hard problems and more responsibility early. So no matter what you think you ultimately want to do, really do think about this as a great way to start, because you will have such a running advantage through the rest of your life with this.
And the opportunity to serve your country is pretty amazing.
Oh my gosh,
it's a blessing,
right?
Yes. Okay,
Great
the
purpose.
last question is for
Okay.
our private sector folks, and so I've jumped back and forth a couple
I
of
know.
times, and
I
you're going to
wish
make that leap now.
Woohoo,
So,
I wish I'd done it earlier.
Actually, I think that
No, I don't mean that. That wasn't creepy. That was just
no,
true.
it's not creepy. I think you're absolutely right. It is. I mean, I will say that I think to the students out there, don't be afraid to do both.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes hard to get in government, but the private sector is a great way to provide service to your government. So don't discount the role
Well,
of the
and
private
look
sector.
what you know now. Look how, oh my gosh, Just, yes,
So,
do that.
But you did mention how innovative the government is, but you know, the reality is that the stuff that's going on in the private sector right now is just unbelievable. You're gonna see it, you're gonna go crazy. You already know it because you're already very integrated, but when you actually get out there and what 5 smart people and $5,000 can do in a minute, it is absolutely amazing. And so, you know, I go to all these events where we talk about, you know, how can the private sector help the government? And, you know, we've been asking these questions for a long time. I mean, the private sector is moving along, they're churning along, they're finding customers for their capabilities, and they're continuing to press ahead. And also, you know, they're recruiting people who at one time thought they could only get that mission sense from coming into the government. But the reality is, if you're a bank and a bank is telling you you can help protect your family's money, that's a kind of a mission critical job. So. So it's kind of 2 questions in one. What is it going to take to actually be more open to new capabilities, recognizing that risk is a big deal? You have to consider risk. You know, we have an important job. But there still seems to be this, you know, we're just, you know, you set up the AIM and the AIM initiative, and there's all these amazing things going on, but then how do we bring those capabilities in and scale them quickly?
Wow, how do I answer this succinctly? Let me shake it out. You have to have the environment that imagines that you want to do that. I think we're building the environment that imagines that you want to do this. You have to come up with a legal construct that does not view legal challenge right around the corner for everything that you want to do. And I think there are some ways that we're looking at in the intelligence community to basically accept volunteerism. Because what I do know is not only is what going on in the private sector massively innovative and moving very fast, but there are huge patriots out there that are dying to help us. And so putting pressure on our legal framework, I think Congress would entertain that if we could frame it for them. And then the last is somehow in each of our agencies, I think we're coming there as a community, we've got to get back to thinking big enough to warrant the change, right? Because our decision makers have such small domain that in order to get something in, they only take something small, and we need at successive layers to imagine something big. And then my pitch is for the private sector, though, there's really good news, and then there's a challenge. The really good news is I think the private sector ought to partner with us because we're all in national security. Most of the threats are actually not to the government, but to the populace and to the private sector. And so there's good reason for you to want to partner with us on things. But even if you can't yet, one of the great things about America is go fast, develop a capability. That's good stuff for national security too. But if you would think about the notion of scale when you proffer your innovative ideas, that's where most of them fall flat. We can't figure out how to get them in to do them at a big enough level.
I told you 2 questions. That was it. Sue Gordon, Director Gordon, thank you so much for being here today.
Okay. I'm hopeful. Be hopeful.
So, while we're exiting the stage, I'd like to introduce our next panel, which is on international cooperation and competition in AI. And Director Gordon actually did a great job describing all the opportunities that exist in this whole new world, but there really are also some significant risks. And so this next panel is going to focus more on that. What AI technologies are most relevant in terms of international cooperation, but also competition, and also putting it in light of where we are in terms of policy with the US and China. So I think this is going to be an incredibly interesting panel. So I'd invite the panel to come up. Sue, thank you.